My name is Mark, and I'm a learning strategist in post-secondary education. My role is to support students to learn more efficiently and effectively. The transition to post-secondary can be challenging. Students often report difficulties adjusting to the academic rigor of university and struggle to keep up with higher expectations, the fast pace of delivery, and heavy volume of coursework. Students are expected to take greater responsibility for their learning in post-secondary, must be skilled at studying, managing their time, setting priorities, and need solid self-care practices to manage the pressure and stress. You may feel that you need to improve your learning skills and habits to better meet the demands of post-secondary. Or perhaps you think you need to improve your learning process to better realize your academic potential. This module is structured to help you do just that. It is strongly recommended you take notes during this module. Taking notes will help you keep more engaged with the material, improve attention and focus, and support better encoding of information into your memory. I suggest you jot down main ideas and information you wish to explore further. To support you in managing the challenges you will face in post-secondary education, this module will focus on improving your efficiency and effectiveness as a learner. Several active learning strategies will be introduced that are designed to strengthen your understanding, retention, and application of knowledge. In addition, the content will focus on improving your productivity, critical thinking skills, and will offer some helpful self-care tips. Remember, a solid learning process is foundational to a positive and rewarding educational experience. It is important to reflect on what you expect to learn in a lecture, lab, or chapter before you start to engage with the content. There are several benefits of taking a moment to reflect prior to learning. This habit helps set expectations, activates prior knowledge, increases engagement and motivation, and enhances focus and attention. So please take about 5 minutes to contemplate these questions. Research indicates that most students spend much of their time learning passively by simply attending lectures, observing demonstrations, reading materials, taking verbatim notes, and quickly reviewing all the information before an assessment. Such an approach, however, is ineffective because it typically results in surface-level understanding rather than deep comprehension of the material. Passive learning lacks the cognitive effort necessary for effective memory retention. In addition, it is far more difficult to recall information and apply knowledge on a test when students rely on passive learning approaches. As this graph indicates, students forget much of what they learn in lectures, read in textbooks, and see in demonstrations within the first few hours. By the next day, if you have done nothing with the information presented in a lecture or reading, you may forget up to half of what you learned. A week later, you may retain as little as 10%. To say the least, busy students can ill afford to forget so much of their learning. Memory and learning are closely intertwined processes that allow students to acquire, store, and retrieve information. Information is received from many sources, including lectures, labs, reading, demonstrations, and videos. First, information is encoded, which is the initial processing of something new through our senses. Encoding happens very quickly. Then, the information is temporarily stored in our short-term or working memory. Our short-term memory can hold about 8 bits of information at one time for about 30 seconds, such as a phone number. Because of the limited capacity of our short-term memory, much of the information is dumped, most of it immediately after reading, seeing, or hearing it. Our long-term memories, however, have immense storage capacity and information can be retained indefinitely. But our memories decay over time, and it is often difficult to remember things exactly as they were initially encoded. To remember something, we need to retrieve the information. That is, follow the pathways our brains make to store information and rapidly locate our learning when we need it, such as on a test. Retrieval is subject to error because there is always a degree of memory loss, so your brain must try not only to find the information, but also reconstruct the memory. It is this retrieval process that often determines how well students perform on assessments. So, how can you improve your ability to encode, store, and retrieve information and apply what you have learned for greater academic results in college? To effectively learn and achieve consistent results, it is important to apply strategies which require deeper engagement with course content, especially during the initial encoding. Active learning strategies enhance comprehension, retention, and the application of knowledge. Other significant benefits of active learning include stronger retention and recall, improved problem solving and critical thinking abilities, as well as the opportunity to incorporate consistent self-care habits into your routine. 15 active learning strategies will be introduced that are recommended to support your post-secondary experience. These are: previewing before a class improves understanding, retention, and engagement. Activating prior knowledge and predicting learning supports your initial understanding of material and prepares you to learn more effectively. Dual coding is the use of more than one sense to learn, which strengthens your ability to store and retrieve knowledge. Setting study goals and learning in intervals helps you be more productive and remember more information. Actively reading and identifying main concepts requires more cognitive effort, which supports greater comprehension and deeper understanding. Active breaks serve as a motivator and an opportunity to consolidate your learning and recharge your brain. Using active recall approaches, such as explaining your learning to a classmate, is a proven method to support critical thinking and improve long-term memory. Taking time to check your learning and identify what you know and isolate what you need to work on helps prepare for assessments. Connecting what you learned during class with the content you previewed and creating a succinct summary supports deeper comprehension. Forming your own questions to analyze information and apply knowledge helps develop sound critical thinking abilities. Recalling and reviewing your notes, summaries, critical thinking questions, and quizzes periodically enhances long-term retention. Creating routines to support active learning helps make learning strategies a consistent habit. Planning learning tasks and activities each day keeps you focused and productive. Practicing self-care enhances your well-being and improves your learning and educational experience. Discover support services, allies, and resources, and use them as soon as you need them. It is impossible to process, understand, and remember all the information presented in lectures and labs. Students often have a difficult time keeping up with the lecturer's pace and as a result lose focus. For many learners, lectures and labs can be tiring and frustrating. Lectures can be especially challenging for students who receive information through ASL interpreting. But there is hope. Our brains look to connect new information with previously stored knowledge and experiences. When we can relate new concepts to what we have stored in our memory, we are able to learn more quickly and increase engagement with the material. This also supports deeper encoding and better retention of knowledge. Previewing resources such as an instructor PowerPoint slide deck in advance of class is an important learning strategy. According to research, previewing significantly improves encoding, comprehension, and retention. Previewing can be done on your own time and at your own pace. In other words, you control what you learn when you preview. Previewing helps you make your learning productive, memorable, and meaningful. The following steps outline how to preview. These are steps you should also follow when reading any course material, such as a textbook chapter. Step 1. Prioritize your courses and resources. It can be difficult to preview for all your courses. You may not have time. In fact, you may not have to preview for every class, just those that are hard, have lots of content, or are lecture intensive. Begin by determining which courses you need to preview for most. Next, create a schedule for previewing for your courses you have prioritized. It is important to set a consistent time to preview for each prioritized class. For example, if you have math class Tuesdays at 9 a.m., block off every Monday evening from 7 to 8:30 p.m. to preview for math. Scheduling a set time on a specific day helps make previewing a priority and a habit. Next, prioritize which resources to preview. You may select from lecture PowerPoint slides posted in advance, a unit reading, or maybe a research article. If the instructor posts a PowerPoint slide deck in advance, preview this first. The PowerPoint slide deck contains the main ideas and content that will be presented in class, so engaging with this material in advance is important. Next, prioritize required reading, such as an associated textbook unit. Try to preview as many required resources as possible, but don't worry if you cannot cover it all. The purpose of previewing is to prepare in advance of class, to put yourself in a solid position to understand and retain the content you will engage with the next day. To begin previewing, it is recommended to find the chapter, unit, lecture, or lab learning objectives. Learning objectives give you a clear idea of what you should be focusing on. They outline the key concepts and skills you are expected to learn, helping you to prioritize your reading and study efforts. Learning objectives are typically located in the course syllabus, sometimes in the PowerPoint slides, and assigned textbook chapters. Read all the objectives to yourself. If you can, read these out loud or sign them. Reading aloud or signing involves more than one sense and is a helpful and simple way to encode your learning for better storage and retention. Step 2. Skim the resources to identify main ideas and concepts. Start by reading the titles of all resources for the associated lesson. For example, read the chapter title to start. If included, read the introduction or sometimes the overview, and then the summary or conclusion. Then read all the resource headings, whether they're slide headings, chapter headings, or research article headings. Finally, if available, skim guiding questions and key terms or concepts. If you can, read all the content aloud or sign it. Skimming this information allows your brain to quickly engage with the main ideas, concepts, and learning objectives for the resources and lesson. Doing so will warm up your brain and prime its ability to reflect and tap into prior knowledge. Step 3. Take time to reflect and predict your learning by asking yourself questions that will help you set expectations, activate prior learning, and increase your engagement. Based off the content you have skimmed, consider the following reflection questions. What might I already know about this topic, and where did I learn it? What do I predict will be presented in the lesson or reading? And what do I want to learn about? Taking some time to reflect will further prime your brain's ability to comprehend and store information from the preview resources. Step 4. Read the resources in intervals. Our best learning happens in intervals of about 30 to 40 minutes. You can set a timer for the interval. For example, preview a textbook chapter for 40 minutes. However, some learners may find setting a goal or a target is better as it is less stressful than racing a timer. For example, set a goal of reading 6 pages or perhaps 2 sections for your interval. Interacting with less material strengthens our ability to more thoroughly comprehend and remember what we read. Setting a goal increases motivation, provides clear direction and purpose, and strengthens focus and productivity. Remember, if you can, sign or read out loud. Doing so improves concentration and encoding. As you read, look for main ideas, concepts, processes, and facts. Try to identify 1 to 3 words per sentence or per concept and write these down. Be sure to write these keywords under the resource heading, and if possible, write down the slide number or page number for easy reference later. Identifying keywords and concepts act as mental triggers, helps you recall larger chunks of information. When it comes time to review your notes, having key concepts and words highlighted makes it easier to quickly refresh your memory and focus on the most important aspects of the material. This technique leverages the brain's ability to remember concise, meaningful pieces of information more easily than long passages. When you finish the interval, set a goal or a target for your next interval. Step 5. After you achieve your interval goal and before you start the next one, take a break of 10 to 15 minutes. Breaks should be viewed as a reward and a motivator. Breaks also support your brain's ability to consolidate what you just learned. Consider doing something that feels good and is productive, such as maybe a walk, lift some weights, prep a meal, or clean up the kitchen. Exercise is a key component to your well-being as it helps manage anxiety and sharpens your ability to learn and think quickly. Do not do something during the break that requires cognitive effort, as this may result in forgetting information you just learned. For example, try to avoid emailing, texting, or social media. When you return from your break, you will be recharged. Returning refreshed from a break presents a good opportunity to further consolidate your learning. Take a few minutes and reflect on what you learned in your last interval and try to recall aloud what you remember or sign it to yourself. Do not look at your notes to do this. Recalling what we recently learned is an effective way of retaining your learning, and it is also a great way to check how well you have learned. For some students, it may be beneficial to walk around while they reflect. Using multiple senses such as signing, reading aloud, moving around supports stronger encoding of knowledge. This is called dual coding. After you have recalled your interval learning, it is time to assess your progress. A good strategy is to look at all the key words you have written down from the interval and check off those you recalled well, and circle those that you missed or do not understand well. This is called a recall accuracy check. After you have checked your recall for accuracy, write a succinct summary of what you have learned in your own words. Jot down key ideas, definitions, and concepts, especially the information that is difficult or you don't yet remember. Finally, it is important to develop critical thinking skills to support deeper engagement with content. Try to create a few questions that help connect ideas and concepts from the interval. Now, you have done a thorough job of learning for that interval. Move on to the next interval and repeat the above process. Step 6. The final previewing step is to test your learning from the resource. When you have finished previewing, take one more break and again do something active or productive. Maybe this time go for a run. You may need to set a timer to remember to end the break and return to your studies. When you return from a break, come back and try to recall aloud or sign everything you have previewed, again without looking at your notes. Then read all your section summaries that you have created. You can test your learning by doing chapter quizzes or even answering the critical thinking questions you have created along the way. Another good strategy is to make some flashcards for difficult concepts and processes. You have been learning for about 30 minutes. It is a good opportunity to recharge and refresh. Take a 10-minute active break. Do some simple exercises, stretch, or something productive like fold the laundry. On the next few screens are some examples of the learning strategies covered so far. Here are some reflection questions you can use to activate prior knowledge and predict learning. It is recommended to write these down for future use. Remember, it is important to reflect to warm up your brain and improve your ability to learn. Here is an example of what it looks like to identify keywords and concepts from a resource. This sample is from a marketing management course. The student has written down the source, in this case the book name and chapter, the date, the section headings, and page numbers. Writing down this information helps with organization. As you read, identify the key word or words and write them under the relevant section heading. Here is an example of what it looks like to summarize learning from an interval. This sample is from the same marketing management course. The student has again written down the source, date, headings, and pages. The student has categorized their recall to help identify what they know well, what they understand but cannot remember yet, and most importantly, isolate what is confusing or difficult. In red are examples of questions the student has created to stimulate critical thinking. The student has then succinctly summarized their learning at the bottom. Trying to keep up with your teacher's lecture pace and writing down as much as you can is not a good option, nor is it even possible. In fact, most students can successfully record maybe 1 to 2 out of every 10 words. This is even more difficult if you communicate in ASL. Copying lectures verbatim is tiring and can be frustrating. This approach is also ineffective and does not support understanding, retention, or recall. During the class, it is recommended to watch for concepts, ideas, processes, and examples that elaborate on the information you have summarized during your previewing. A good note-taking strategy is to write down your preview notes on the left page of your notebook and write corresponding class notes on the adjacent page. This is an example. If you type your notes, it can be easier to add information. Research, however, demonstrates that writing by hand better supports comprehension and retention. You may also wish to abbreviate some words to take quicker notes, as the example demonstrates. There are several effective note-taking methods. To learn more, see the resource at the end of this module. Remember that students forget much of what they learn within the first few hours. It is therefore vital to engage with your learning soon after class. Doing so helps better retain your learning and supports critical thinking skills. A useful and simple strategy is to recall your learning from class. Even 15 minutes of recall makes a difference. There are several ways to recall your learning from class. One option is to explain your learning to a classmate. Try to recall what you learned from class and summarize it off the top of your head like you were teaching your classmate. Then your classmate can do the same. To support critical thinking, ask each other questions about the content. If explaining your learning is not an option for you, recall your learning from class alone and recite it aloud or sign it. Consider walking around like you are presenting if you can. You can then check your recall for accuracy by reviewing your class notes and evaluating what you recalled well, forgot, or do not yet understand. Another option is to summarize your class notes into succinct bullet points. Remember, these summaries are a great resource for studying for assessments. If time permits, it may be useful to integrate your summaries from previewing with your lecture or lab summaries. Lastly, if available, you can take or retake the textbook chapter quiz to see how you do, or even answer chapter critical thinking or guiding questions. To support long-term retention, you should recall and review all your reading and lecture summaries that you have created at least once per week. Set aside a time weekly in your calendar to make sure you commit to consistently engaging with materials. Be sure to review the previous summaries each week to help combat the forgetting curve. So, if it's week 3 of the term, recall and review weeks 1 and 2 before reviewing your week 3 summary. Remember to read aloud or sign the summaries you have created. Concentrate on making connections between concepts and ideas as you review your summaries. Often you will find that difficult concepts from previous lectures are clarified as you review more recent information. For courses that have formulas, calculations, and processes, set aside time to practice these consistently. Be sure to test yourself periodically by doing practice quizzes, revisiting unit guiding questions, and consider practical applications of your knowledge, such as examples and case studies. Write these review and practice sessions into your schedule. An important predictor of post-secondary academic success is how well you use your time. In fact, most of the learning strategies shared in this module will not be effective if you are unable to prioritize when to use them. So often students try new learning strategies but are unable to commit to them on a consistent basis because forming new habits is difficult. Most students successfully attend classes, arrive on time, because these are scheduled and become part of their routine. Your active or independent learning should be no different. The most effective way to plan for active learning strategies is to make them a priority by permanently writing them into your weekly schedule so they occur on the same day of each week at the same time. In other words, you need to make previewing, summarizing, reviewing, and active recall part of your routine. The example active learning schedule shown is for a student in a marketing management program who is taking 6 courses in a term. The student has a busy schedule and needs to be efficient and effective with their time. In this example, the student has prioritized 2 courses, economics and operations management. The student has written in a consistent schedule for both of these courses to preview, recall, and summarize after class, as well as do weekly spaced reviews. These are highlighted in yellow. Note that the student has tried to keep the same schedule for both courses for previewing from 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. to build a routine that is easier to stick to. The student has managed to schedule 30-minute recall and summary sessions right after all economics and operations management lectures. Finally, the student has set up review sessions for both courses on Saturday. Take a moment to review this schedule and consider building your own active learning schedule when you start college or university. Please remember, as much as possible, this schedule should remain consistent for the entire term. By having a set schedule, you can control your learning and manage your time efficiently and effectively. It is recommended to use a whiteboard to build your active learning schedule. It is critical to set aside planning time each day. Lack of planning is a major focus drain. It's a challenge to get into and remain in the study zone when you are uncertain of what you should be working on. It is important to set a consistent time each evening to plan for the next day. This practice will help you identify and accomplish your priorities with less distraction. It will also keep you focused and productive, help you meet deadlines, better prepare for assessments, and reduce periods of procrastination. Step 1. Brainstorm your upcoming tasks. Be sure to look ahead in your calendar to identify more complicated tasks, such as papers, that may need to be started now. Step 2. Rank the tasks based on factors such as the due date, what needs to be done, as well as the complexity of the task. Step 3. Estimate how long each task will take. Find the blocks of time in your schedule that are free for at least 1 hour. Step 4. Write your tasks into available blocks of time. It can be helpful to write down a goal for the task, such as complete 10 math problems. For students that have a hard time starting a task, consider writing down an easy, quick step to begin with. For example, review the math formulas from yesterday. Remember, study in intervals. Be sure to write in breaks to recharge and increase productivity. Here is an example of a daily task plan. With a written plan, it will be easier to motivate to start your work. Once you have started studying, it is easier to remain productive. You can check off each task as you complete it. Be sure to reward yourself with an active break after each session. The student has divided their tasks into intervals to maximize focus and productivity in this example. The student has written down a short, easy task to begin, has included productive breaks, and a reward at the end to serve as a motivator. Self-care is vital to being your best self as a student. A few simple self-care strategies can make a big difference for your post-secondary experience. Research demonstrates that sleep provides an essential function for memory consolidation, which in turn is critical for successful academic performance. A recent study found that longer sleep duration, better sleep quality, and greater sleep consistency were associated with better academic performance. Lack of sleep has been linked to poor attention and cognition. So the key is to set up a sleep schedule that you stick to. Your body needs the right nutrients to function at its best. Eat lots of energy foods like nuts and berries and avoid processed foods that make you feel tired. Be organized and have these snacks ready for your study sessions. Moderate to vigorous exercise, such as a brisk walk, releases dopamine, the brain chemical which sharpens your ability to learn and think quickly. If done before an assessment, exercise can increase mental processing. Consider exercising outside. Being outside can give you a boost as it increases energy levels. Stimulants such as caffeine can impair your short-term memory and can lead to fatigue and irritability. Energy drinks fuel anxiety, so try to avoid those. Stronger memory encoding, retention, and recall occur when we eat healthy, sleep well, and exercise. You have learned a lot in this module. It is time to give yourself a break. Take 10 to 15 minutes to do something productive and feels good. Set a timer to remind yourself to end your break and return to this module. Setting up reminders like this is important to help stay on track, be productive, and to avoid procrastination. Welcome back. It is time to put your active learning to the test. The final activity is to do a written summary of what you have learned in this module. Well done, you have completed this module. Enjoy your post-secondary experience.